Oh, they blew pop. Okay. Okay.
All right. Well, welcome to another installment of Voices of Color Skating Stories. As always, we want to start with Voices of Color is not endorsed or affiliated with Society for Creative Anachronism Incorporated. The views of a host and guest do not represent the views, values, and policies of SEA Inc. This is authentic space, which is why I say that at the beginning of every show. We are real people coming in, telling real stories about some real shit that happened. And I must say, today has been a day. So I think this one's going to be quite a little lively discussion here.
Spicy.
Spicy. I do want to remind viewers, because this came up earlier today for me. Everyone who is on this show is a volunteer. I have not reached out to anyone on this show, except for a couple people for special episodes lining up for next year. This has been people saying, I want a place to tell my story. I think this story will help, validate other people. This story will help shape some of the future of the SCA. But I am not actively reaching out to folks. So if you want to be on this show, please send us a message. That's how you get on. That's my way of knowing and understanding that you are not only willing to be on the show, but are willing to engage in whatever conversation comes up. We make sure that everybody has a voice. There's not been one person that has not said I want to be on the show who hasn't been on the show. This is not about my agenda or Jessica's agenda, Gigi's agenda. This is a platform for people of color to talk about issues that we experience in the gate, outside of the gate, when we leave our front doors. So I just want to make that really, really clear. This is a volunteer, and myself and my lovely co-hosts, we are volunteers. Like we chose to create this space because it's something that was needed, because it's missing. It's lacking from some of the areas where just, interviews are being done. This is the real side of what happens outside of the SCA. So with that, I want to introduce, or let my co-host introduce herself. We're down a co-host tonight, and I happen to have this wonderful person next to me, or theoretically next to me, helping out today. Who are you, co-host?
People should know who. No, I'm kidding.
They really should by now.
It has been a while, right? Okay, so episode 8. I am Jessica. I am the SCA DEI officer, but I am here just as a skating of color, talking about my experiences with our wonderful guest, who I will let introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, my hostesses, for once again letting me be on the show. So I really appreciate this. My name is Count Seto Gesshuko from the Midrealm. I've been in the society for around, it's been 11 years, almost 12 years now. I do lots of things medieval, from teaching historical African martial arts to teaching Hama, to doing bow hurt, which is like basically MMA with steel, to SCA combat, to rapier combat, arts and sciences, you name it. I just love being a medievalist, and I am a person of color. So,
holy shit, you are?
I know, right? Like, wow.
I remember talking about colorism and what person of color means, and so it's great to remind folks that the term person of color has a wide spectrum of what it means. But everybody on this show is a person of color. So Seto, as a person of color, how did you get into the SCA?
Wow. So how did I get in the SCA? Let's go back just a little bit more. I've always loved sword culture. I've always loved, not really been a D&D nerd, but I like playing video games that have adventure and fantasy. And when I was in the Air Force over in Ramstein, Germany, my best friend Kyoji was like, hey man, I'm playing this bamboo stick fighting game. It's called the SCA. You should check it out when you come back to the States. Not knowing that I could do it probably in Drachenwald and on the military base. There were probably people, but people didn't talk about it a whole lot. So it was my best friend I'd known since I was like 8 who got me into the SCA.
And what was that transition like?
It was,
I mean, because you hear about it. I don't know. You hear these things about the SCA, and so you hear sticks and fighting and what was that like entering in that world, especially being as white as it is?
Yeah, it was really interesting. It's kind of and we'll get into it, I'm sure, some more going in the show. My upbringing, I'm from Central Illinois, so it's mostly rural. There's a lot of it's lots of Caucasian people, white people. At my high school, it was maybe like only 30 to 20 of us Black kids, and we had some Asians, we had some, but I was used to the demographic being predominantly white, so that wasn't as much jarring to me. A lot of people were pretty kind for me for the most part at the beginning, like just like a whole bunch of nerds, like, oh, you're a nerd, I'm a nerd too, that's cool. And it was more the transition, I guess, later into SCA culture. I think like maybe 5 or 6 years in, where I start being like, why aren't there a lot of other Black people playing? Or I'm not sure. Or I mean, you got to think about 6 years ago, about 7. The culture still for a lot of African Americans mostly was like, why are you doing this nerd white person thing? This isn't really for you. They don't want you there. And for the most part, I'm like, no, you don't know. You don't know. These are my friends. These are people really cool. But it was an interesting tradition at the beginning because I was welcomed, but then it was more once you get entrenched in and then you start traveling more, you start seeing some things that you're like, oh, okay, now I see some of this one, maybe somebody else wouldn't come, or they just weren't really the demographic that was really being catered to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked on the previous show about, you don't wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and see a person of color. It's often something happens or someone reminds you that you are an other.
Mm-hmm.
And, we come to the SCA, and I hope folks really hear this. Like, y'all say leave your politics at the gate. We want to come and have a good time too. Like, I want to come. I want to see my friends. I want to have a drink. I don't want to be reminded as the other. And it happens. Mm-hmm. It happens, right?
Yeah.
And we all have those stories. I don't know if you want to share any of your stories, but I know that, the othering is really what we're trying to get at here in this show, is talk about how we do that, how we address that.
And I think it's interesting as you think everyone has a different upraising. I know you guys had awesome Sabal last episode, and he was awesome, and he's been a mentor, being one of the other Black Knights in the society, and especially one of the other few Black Knights in the Midrealm. He very much so helped mentor me on different things. He had different occurrences that happened in his life, as well as also in the SCA. But some of his are just rough. I mean, go back and check that episode. If any of you haven't, please check out that episode. It was great, awesome, and it gives you another view into different spectrums or different worlds. When I first started, like, we'll just go back to like elementary school, being in a Caucasian area, being mostly, my mom was a kindergarten teacher for the whole district, so people knew me, so it was a little bit different. However, I had friends that I've known since we were like kids and we're in 3rd grade. I remember losing a race to a kid once, and he looked back at me and like not being mean, not being racist, he's like, I thought Black people were faster. And I remember looking at that and I was like, if it was like an anime or a cartoon, you see a giant question mark above my head, like, what's that? Am I supposed to be faster? Am I slower? Like, what's going on? And then that was when I started being like, oh, there are other different stigmas that people have, or you're just supposed to be this way if you're Black. Or classic, you guys can all hear me talk, viewers at home, everyone. People will be like, you don't talk Black. I don't know. And that was another one that I got around the same time. I was like, my skin is there. I'm talking. I don't understand. And then you start seeing culture and other parts. And I like rap culture. I like hip hop culture. I like these other things where that was what people would think that's what everyone's supposed to sound like. And as you know, that's just not right. I mean, it's not really fair, especially when we get those SCA later. Once people start getting more comfortable, they start trying to relate with you. And one of the biggest things that people relate with, they'd say, well, you're not really Black though. You're the whitest person I know. And I used to let that slide all through high school, all through college, and now someone said, like, hey, I understand what you mean by that. Like, you're trying to be accepting, or you're trying to say, like, hey, I don't see that. But that's the most disservice you can do to me by not giving me what is on the outside. This is my culture. There's beautiful African culture. If you can see on the back, I have a Mamluk helmet, like I'm starting to work on a Mamluk kit, which is more African. granted, people will just be like, well, they were just slaves. I'm like, actually, slave culture was all different, especially in some parts of Muslim, where it wasn't like American slave culture. It was more like, hey, you're indentured, but yet you can get your freedom. And that's a whole thing I could get into later in the show. But people would be like, why don't you talk black? Why aren't you like this? You're the whitest person I know. And I'm like, don't say that. That's actually one of the most upsetting / hurtful things I've ever heard. And I know you didn't mean it that way, but this is what it does for me. It takes away from my culture. It takes away from my heritage. I am who I am. I am of African descent. Not everyone who is also brown or black part is from African. So the whole African American is something that can really be dived into. And I didn't really realize that until more the last couple of years, where I was talking with my good friends from the UK. And I was like, well, you're an African American. I'm being like, he's from the UK. He's born and raised UK. He's like, mate, I'm British. I was like, oh, my bad. What am I doing? So it's that whole, just because you meet a black person doesn't mean they're African American. But in my case, I have Nigerian heritage. I have some parts of Ethiopian, as well as some Scandinavian, which makes me more kind of entitled to Viking stuff if we're going by heritage, which is interesting. But I appreciate that. And something to myself has been the self-discovery in these last couple of years to actually learn more about African culture and be able to, I don't like to use the word regurgitate because that sounds unpleasant. I like to be able to actually give verbatim culture that is correct and accurate about these things. And it's been a challenge to myself to learn this. And stop me if you want to get to another question. I'm like, I can go. But
no, not at all. You're Jessica.
Yeah, I got Jessica.
So I know we've talked about this. We talked about this in the pre-show, and we talk about this all the time. I can't underscore enough the frustration that I feel in my bones when people are like, well, you're kind of like an Oreo. And I'm like, I can't, because added to what Seto said about how dare you strip me of literally my culture, but look at the unconscious bias on display. What did you expect me to sound like? What is your internal reckoning of what a black person sounds like? That the fact that I spoke in a complete sentence that you're like, it's just so frustrating. It's it is one of the very few things that gets me immediately at an 8 or a 9 every time.
And I think folks need to realize, so this was in our pre-show discussion, this was a hot topic for us when we were talking, because we've all experienced that. I don't always consider myself pretty light-skinned, and then I look at my dad who's from Haiti, and I'm like, damn, the melanin skipped me. But no, my mom is white, and so she's German, Irish, Swedish. And my dad is from Haiti, just learning, doing some work that we're heritage tracing back to South Africa, but I've always identified as Haitian. And so when I get that Oreo, I'm like, I don't, what are you talking about? I'm fake. Am I playing a role? This just doesn't make sense. And it's hard because on the one hand, you get from, some folks, it's like, oh, well, you're really well spoken for a black person. And then we get from the other side, from other people of color, you've been whitewashed, or you're, too white to be black. And this colorism thing happens. And I wish I could say, it just stays in our outside of the SCA, but it doesn't. Some of the worst fighting I've been noticing has been the colorism within the SCA. And it's I don't think people understand how that all is so hugely harmful to everyone, not just who is being called an Oreo, but what that does to the entire society as a whole. And I'm happy to explore this issue because, boy, 39 years, I just outed myself, but 39 years of hearing Oreo, half-breed, mulatto, all of those, it gets old. It is a trigger button too.
Yeah, and as it should be. And it's hard. Don't get me wrong, people, viewers at home. There are some parts, if you have a one-on-one basis with a person, and there are some things that are playful and you're okay with, that's all right. But most of the time, it's still in the actual one-on-one conversations, because when other people hear things, they assume that then they can do that as well. when it's like it's on a case. I had one family I love dear to me. They would like around them, like the kids were like, they were 8, like real young, and they're like, hey, they're chocolate, like it's cool. And I was like, and the father was like, like, is that okay? I'm like, no, there's nothing malicious by that. I mean, who doesn't like chocolate? And I think it's cute. Like, I'm okay with that. They're not saying that I'm only a chocolate man. There's also some culturisms in Japan and China, other places where they thought they called Black people kokojin, like kokojin, person of cocoa, and they were told that people that we were actually like made out of chocolate. So I have a friend that told a story where he actually one time a woman like came at him with a spoon. I don't know if that's so true. It was like to really be, are you actually made out of chocolate? He's like, no, I'm not. But I believe it. Things, people are confused by such things. But it's most of the time it's still hurtful, and it's really to have it like everyone, as you know, you grown up kids, just ask a question. May I refer to you as this? Is this offensive to you? But however, after you ask that question, do not be mad by the answer that you may receive, and understand what they are deciding is their preference. They are not speaking for everyone, but they are speaking for themselves. And you have to validate that and then move on. And it's hard. We're talking this also more representation. If I can go into that, is that all right? Or should I wait?
Do it. Take it there.
Yeah, it's hard where in culture in general, let's go to just, I love superheroes. I'm wearing anime stuff, Dragon Ball Z, blah, everything. Representation of people of different colors. I know, right? Just like from different colors. You don't see that many Black people in anime. You don't see that many Black people as superheroes until some of a resurgence recently, which is interesting. However, people start getting mad that they're like, why are you changing some of our Black superheroes or white superheroes into Black superheroes now? And you're like, whoa, there you have a whole bunch. Now, I granted you grew up with this person, that part, and you don't always want it changed, but it will be okay, and vice versa if it gets this way. Heimdall in, I'm being a nerd here now, in Thor, played by Idris Elba. He was originally a white character. Idris Elba did it awesome, did amazing. He's my hero, which is why I'm rocking the beard and the hair. After I saw him in The Harder They Fall, I'm like, man, Idris Elba's awesome. Anyway. Just think about that for a second. But it's these characters where the representation of seeing a superhero that looks like you makes a difference. When I was growing up, Superman was my favorite superhero. I loved him, didn't care that he was white. It was more about what he was about. Now, granted, people are like, he's a Boy Scout, blah, 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 blah. It's more about he chooses to do the right thing, and he could not do, which was so cool to me. And now as we grow up and you get beaten up by life and culture, you're like, I can't be Superman. I can't be Superwoman. Like, I'm just a human. So I kind of put that on a pedestal. And now I'm just more of a Green Lantern type, like just will myself to go through life. But anyway, nerd stuff there. It's nice to have representation. All nerd. Oh my God. People are like, sorry, you lost like 20 people. They're like, I don't. I'll come back when he stops nerding. But Black Panther is great. Some people like it. Some people don't. It was cool to see this superhero with this representation, and not even more of that as a African major and studies person, when they showed the first fight before M'Baku challenged him and came through the waterfall, and they show you all these tribes of Africa. Granted, they have this kind of flavor or artistic liberties they took with them, but you saw like the one face thing, like Maasai tribe with the hunting. They had some other tribes with the face piercings. I don't know all of them. They had some of the Mbuku tribe. They had some of the Shant. Like, there was amazing things they did, and people just gloss over it because it's just like a minute. They're like, oh, that was really cool. I'm like, you don't understand what they did in that minute of cool. They incorporated a whole continent. Because I mean, Africa's the biggest country in the world. No, I'm just kidding. Africa's a big continent. When people will say like this, it's a country. You're like, I don't know. I don't hear that much so often, but it has been said. So that is more so what especially in the SCA, it's Eurocentric. So I knew I loved Japanese martial arts growing up as a kid. That's what I've done since I was 8. Aikido, Shonen-ryu, Hapkido, Kung Fu, like you name it. I've done like the whole spectrum of things. And that's why I have my samurai armor in the corner. I love the samurai culture, which is a lot of things that you see in Black culture these days. A lot of people more accepting of anime because it's not necessarily Caucasian, but it's not theirs either, but it can be yours. So when you see the samurai culture and you see some of the anime is big. Now for myself, my persona is based upon Yasuke, the African samurai, who is a real character who in 1870, later, and he left around 1852, or 1582, when Lord Nobunaga died, but he got sent to Japan through the African Jesuits. And he goes through the saga of spreading Christianity with Villanyaho, who's a Jesuit from Spain. And eventually they get done. They're like, sweet, we spread Christianity. Lord Nobunaga, the overlord of Japan, is like, thank you so much, but I want that guy. They're like, oh yeah, sure, you can have him. You can have our black sellsword / mercenary guy. And then Yasuke, long story short, eventually became a samurai. And that's a big deal because afterwards, after Nobunaga died, his lord, they were like, don't worry about killing him. He's just an animal. In Japanese culture, they didn't consider him worthy enough. They're like, he was made a samurai this, but we don't see him as worthy. And we don't know what happened to him. But that's what I based my persona on. And rest Chadwick Boseman's heart and soul. He was supposed to play that character in a movie who was supposed to be coming out soon. So now we don't know who will get there. I mean, I'm working on getting my abs back. So if there's any movie mobiles watching it, I know a lot about Yasuke. I mean, I can lift, let me know. I'm not as good as Chadwick Boseman, but I would love to play Yasuke. So anyway, sorry, little pitch there.
Out in the world.
Yeah, I know, right? It's there somewhere. And some guys will be like, what the hell? No. Put that guy on the list for no. But that's the representation that I wanted. So when I started doing my Japanese, or actually African persona wearing Japanese, because I moved, and there's a whole bunch of things like that. They're like, oh, nice Japanese persona. And I used to be like, yeah, sure. Like, yeah, I didn't. But now I try to be like, actually, I'm doing an African persona in a Japanese setting. And it's based on a real story. And I used to not do that because I felt like I was being too much black power, being like, no, I'm not, I'm black. Which, not the only thing I say exactly. I'm like, oh, no, I'm playing this. But it's the truth. It shows the representation that people can actually travel across the world. Things aren't in a vacuum. I just saw something like 2 days ago that there was supposedly a samurai in Mexico in like 1600 something. So, I mean,
wow,
people travel.
So, like, I don't even know where to start because, like,
sorry,
everything you're talking about, I'm like, yes. I remember Black Panther hitting like so hard because Black folks in America have this impossible task, right? We are totally divorced from our cultures. We many of us were either brought here or came from places that were heavily colonized, right? And so you don't even know where to trace ancestors to, and then you're vilified every time you try to establish a new culture. And then you have this fantasy land, right? And it's this culture-rich, untouched land that literally like redefines what it is to be a first world country because they're impossibly rich and they have incredible resources, which we know that the continent of Africa is the most resource-rich continent there is. And so it's this expression of Africa as it might have been. And it's just amazing to kind of know that this exists so that like young Black kids can go and they can see themselves represented as like genius inventors and strategic leaders and wise and strong warriors. Like, it's just crazy to me that I had never seen anything like this. So much of Black representation focuses on Black trauma and Black pain. And it's always coming from that place. And it was so amazing to kind of see it represented in just such a thoroughly positive way. I mean, it's when we do the SCA, we have the opportunity to do this, right? We have the opportunity to represent all of the beauty without necessarily having to delve into this trauma. And I'm not saying we should ignore it because we never should ignore it, but we still get to show positive representation. We still get to bring things to light that don't typically get focused on in traditional like history courses or anything else. I've done so much learning here that I never would have done anywhere else. And a lot of it is because other people of color brought stuff to light.
Literally the truth. I would not be working on my anthropology and African studies if it wasn't for the SCA and then somewhat in this trigger now martial arts and HAMA or historical African martial arts if I didn't start in this path. And it was all the way. Sorry, go ahead.
No. But please finish. Go.
No. You.
No, I was just thinking, the same. I've never been so connected to Haiti and getting into Haitian artifacts and looking at, my Haitian roots if it weren't for the SCA. So on the one hand, I've been, when I came in, it was, you're not going to be able to do Haiti, find something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't even tell you what I thought I would have to do, thinking like, these white people are going to expect me to be a slave. Even getting past that.
Gotten that? Because I've gotten that.
I asked that though. I literally asked. I was like, so one, am I gonna have to like play a slave? And two, I'm never gonna be on retinue because there's no way I'm gonna be serving people. But that's a whole other. That's like maybe our close up episode. We can talk about that. That's a lot, but it was like that's what I thought the only options were, because I'm not a history buff. I'm liking the pretty things. I'm liking the arts. I'm liking exploring myself. But I wouldn't have had this if it weren't for the SCA, and there weren't avenues when I initially came in. So I'm hoping that, Seto, through your story, Jessica, through your work, that this is all going to pave the path for these younger generations who are coming in like, I want to find my roots. And it's not like well, why don't you settle for this until we figure this out? It's here's who you go to, here are the resources. How can I help you be the best persona you can be that speaks to you not only as a skatian but as a person? Like the work that you are doing, the work that both of you are doing, is paving the way for those future generations who want to do that. And I hope you realize how important it is.
I think we just see it as just being fun and the right thing to do, but thank you so much for saying that. And I can say honestly, not due to okay, it is, but it's not like putting yourself on a pedestal. We had a young lady, which I won't mention names, that's why we met in the East when we were hanging out to see my friend Ryu fight in Crown, who now actually won, which is awesome, even though it's not SCA endorsed, but I don't care. I'm telling you, he's awesome. And he's now Prince of the East, and his lovely lady Andrakshi. But we met this young lady who was doing fighting, and I actually got to fight her a little bit because I was there for like a week in New York. And I met her, and she's just doing her stuff. She's just having a great time. Every time, like whenever I hit her, like she just laugh. And she's having a great time. And later, she's like, "What's your persona? What do you do? What are you working on?" And I feel like I hopefully sped her up just a little bit to be like, "Yeah, you can do this if you want. Like, let me know. There's armors that will get you if you want to do Egyptian, if you want to do Ethiopian, if you want. Let us know what you want." And kid you not, the next time I saw her 2 weeks later, it was Jessica first met her. She was in all Ethiopian garb. And she went out and got herself, did the research on. Jessica helped give her some other pointers, but she actually made it happen. Because you can give information to people and they can be like, I'll get to it eventually. But she already was wearing this amazing garb. And people were like, "Oh, you've just been in the SCA for like 2 months, 3 months." And she's like, "Yeah, I just found what I wanted to do." And that was so cool. So cool.
That is a very touching story. And please take credit for paving the path. I mean,
her, I don't know which way to point is Jessica.
Well,
I just helped. I just kept on saying,
y'all
do it.
That's totally right, though. If you don't know that you can explore these things, like if you don't know that there's other people doing it and that, yeah, it's rare, but if you don't even know that persona diversity beyond Western Europe is an option, then why would you even think to do it? And we all know it's so much more difficult, right?
Yeah.
I can Google Viking garb and I can get like 30 different patterns from like 4 different finds, and I can like read all of these things in English. Whereas like all of the research I had to do was work.
A lot.
Yeah.
And
or throw a stone and hit a Viking laurel, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I know
Frontier, sorry.
No, it's
Viking.
I mean, there's a few. There's some good ones. But I know I'm not gonna say throw at kingdoms, but there's some people where people doing Japanese culture, like, because there's a lot of people that want to do samurai, and it was kind of resurging as I was doing a little bit. And people were like, "Whoa, we don't do." I feel like the bad T'Challa, like, we don't do that here. Like, we don't do Japanese, like do European or something else. But I remember hearing that, and that's not like, oh, maybe that part. They literally said be European or something, maybe closer. I guess you could be Muslim if you want to, but then they'd say that with a big M. It's like be Muslim backhand. You're like, yes, we have all these things, 1911, all this stuff like there. The culture itself and what happened there is still a beautiful culture, and people are not all evil and still learning from the culture. So take that for what you will. it's interesting. And like you said, with doing the research, or Jessica finding the research, or Nina, I'm sure it's hard now as I do more historical African martial arts and I do more research. I'm actually having to reach out from people from Ghana, from Ethiopia, and trying to be like, give me documentation. But a lot of stuff is word of mouth, is oral.
Yes.
But there are some things you're either taking depiction from biblical texts or religious texts, and then you see a person with a sword, and then you get some garb, and now you go and ask the people, and hopefully you find someone that's like, how would you do this? And it might just be made up, but at least you're getting it from the source, and then you interpret it. Whereas Italians, I mean, you look at Fiore, you look at all these great manuscripts. As I do more of the HEMA, historical European martial arts, they have all these great manuscripts and all these things to just follow. And I'm just like, I'm jealous. And a lot of these people are open. They understand that it's like, man, I don't pity you at all for all the stuff you're trying to do and trying to make this, but you're going to have a hard time. But they're glad I'm doing it, which is awesome.
Yeah.
There are some people that'd be like, don't do it or do that elsewhere. I will throw a good name out. Greg Mele of Chicago Swordplay Guild. He is awesome. He's made a HEMA group for, I don't know when they started. It's like probably in the 1990s or so in Chicago. And I actually teach historical African martial arts there. And he has been a platform. He's like, be honest, I am not the right complexion to get this started. I think it should be someone that has culture, who actually is a person of color, to drive this forward, but not at the level of affirmative action where it's like, yeah, you're Black, you'll do. He's like, you know your stuff. Go out there and teach. And our motto is to not let any martial art in their hemisphere die. And Africa is part of their hemisphere. So they're like, go for it. And that's been really refreshing. So.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it was like pre-internet trying to pursue.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was literally writing to professors at the University of Addis Ababa, trying desperately to find sources on textiles, because I could find things, and there's a little bit more now that the war between Eritrea and Ethiopia is done. But I could not, for love or money, find things. I was having people translate things from Hebrew into English because I couldn't find anyone to translate the Amharic. And like, you're right. Meanwhile, like, all I have to do for Norse is like make an open-sided apron dress, and like 6 Norse laurels will pop up and be like, there is no evidence for that. And that's it. I don't even have to do the work. They will come to me. It can be really hard. And I wish people kind of acknowledge that more readily. And I do think that after I finish the work that I'm doing right now in the SCA, I do want to move into teaching more about Ethiopian and Eritrean history. Now that I have a bunch of these sources, I just think it would be really great for people to feel that the information is accessible, and that the personas are easy enough to take on.
Yeah, I think it's crucial. One, because we want it to be accurate. 2, we want it to be accessible. And 3, it's just awesome. I can think of more numbers, but I keep on going. I don't know.
But that accessibility piece, though, is really the barrier that I think a lot of people have talked about and not really sure how to solve, especially if we're bringing in, folks from different places and really trying to diversify the work that we're doing. People get stuck in the academics, and not everybody has access to, those texts. Like, I have access through my master's program. I still have, the access to those libraries. Not everybody does. So how do we make it more accessible for someone coming in who says, I'm passionate about this. I want to research this. I don't personally have the resources to get online and do this. And so how do we start making those connections with people? How do we start putting people in the right direction? How do we start creating a directory? I don't know. How do we do that?
I mean, we have a lot of the word of mouth now. I know for Japanese culture, some stuff, I am not still like a big aficionado, but people will be like, go to Seto, he knows stuff. And I'm like, oh, I know like a little bit and a lot of Yasuke. But then I reach out to like Ryu, or I reach out to Date, or many other different people. So it's more of an oral kind of pipeline. However, you lose one person from that pipeline and then everything gets lost, because that is a thing where people move. So I think it's more free, or was it open source type things that we actually just get out there. That's like, stop guarding knowledge. It's hard because, I mean, I'm going to put in a lot of money to get more research done for stuff in Ghana. And then I do want, because that's more my job, I do want to get compensated a little bit. But after you get some part, it's like, get it out there, it's free. And then I get to do my own talks in person, but you can't gate guard it, hold on to it. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good knowledge sharing now with like, there's an SCA Africa group on Facebook.
Yeah.
The groups that Seto's been talking about, anyone in there is like so excited to share what they've learned and how they've learned it. But it is still very kind of grassroots at this point. There's just not a lot of interest at the kind of larger scale, which is a shame because I'm really hoping that once we see more of like the Black Panthers and the Yasuke movie and whatnot, like I'm hoping that we see more traction with people actively interested so that the information becomes more accessible.
Yeah.
I think we need to also, as we're thinking about bringing people in, saying, you know, there's so many groups dedicated to these niche fields that, you know, look on SCA, find that one connection who can open up doors. And I think that's not, I don't know that a lot of newcomers hear that and get that information about, like, you can find people on Facebook. But I know for me, when I started, I was interested in DEI for the longest time. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, I was like, oh, I wonder if there's an SCA group. And then wham, I type in, you know, DEI and 5 come up, and then it's like Skadians of Color, and then that opened doors. But we don't really share that knowledge. And I think that's, if we're going to start talking about diversification of memberships, like that has to be one of those pieces right away. That's like, connections are so important. Do it through Facebook, do it through, someone said, Creative Commons. I mean, like, there are places we need to point people to so they feel empowered to do that too.
Yeah. And I think the hard part is to, I mean, we're not licensed by the SCA. On this part, we're talking all of our own thoughts, but it's hard. We get a lot of people that are passionate, yet some people are not people. And then they just, someone walks in the door and they're like, wow, hit with a fire hose of knowledge. And they're like, whoa, oh God, like, I just wanted to find a bathroom, or maybe this sounds like curious or that part, and you scare these people away. So it's hard. It's like, you say, like, first of all, ask the question, hey, we're part of the SCA, this part here. What are you looking for? And then if they say, I don't know, you slowly and nicely say, there's all these things, but you get to choose. Look at this, look at the menu, and then I will come back to you like a waiter or waitress and be like, have you chosen what you would like to sample or see? Perhaps some combat, or perhaps some fiber arts. Yeah. Oh, you still need some time. Here's some water. That's cool. I'll be right back. Like, people just hit people over the head because they are hungry to get new people in, and it can be very scary.
Yeah, mentorship. You just reminded me though of this. I don't remember what movie or show where they're like, "Don't startle the nerds. You got to walk real quietly. Like, they're gonna run."
It's true.
Peripherally, or I guess parallelly. Parallel. I do think that we don't do the best job of retention when it comes to people of color. People of color often don't stay in the SCA, right? Like a lot of folks will come and they'll kind of look around, and then for whatever reason, they don't see a spot for themselves, and so they leave. And I think part of it is that kind of initial strong come on in the wrong ways, right? Mm-hmm. Like, to reference back to what I said earlier, I definitely got the, well, you could be a slave, I guess, but I'm like, whoa. Hey, welcome to the SCA, right? And like, so Seto was someone who I talked to actually a lot before I ever went to my first event. And we talked a lot about what it meant to be a person of color in the SCA, because I had a lot of trepidation. I was just like, it's real white. It's real white. And I vividly remember like messaging him, and he was like, it'll be great. Like, you should check it out. I'll be at this event. And I'm like, And while I've like clearly found a community that I love and like a family, honestly, it is not that I haven't had my fair share of racial issues, and I've only been in for a few years, and I can still point to 4 or 5 times I've had either uncomfortable situations surrounding race, weird discussions about, I mean, in just a few years, can you imagine what happens to folks who are not otherwise as invested, right? You hit one or two of those and you're like, no, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
For sure. I think though, you know, and I could be wrong. I'm just gonna call it what it is. Trimgate changed generations. Because I came in from Oregon. I mean, again, Oregon is white. And so I picked up on the shit right away. Like I was like, I can't believe you're not seeing this shit. My partner's been in for like 20, 30, God only knows how many years, and is white. And so they're, you know, not noticing that because you're not a person of color. But then Trimgate happened. And boy, did people say, holy shit, this is not the SCA I knew. This is something that I didn't know existed. And so I think there is a point where it's like Pandora's box is open and there's no putting that shit back. And so I think part of what we can capitalize on, I don't want, capitalize is a wrong word.
Just use the momentum. Use the momentum.
Yeah. The social injustices that have happened, we can't go back. They happened. They are here. They opened up eyes, and I don't know that we can go back to SCA as it was. I don't think that's possible.
They can't, and a lot of people want to be understanding. What was the one before telling Jessica's story about how and it was funny. I just was a newly minted knight, and I was talking to my wife, and I was like, "Hey, I want to go up and do knight stuff and go up to the barony up there and like do a fighter practice and help." And she's like, "Okay, like that sounds great." And then by whim, I just happened to meet her. She was doing archery most of the time. I was fighting with another friend of mine, Morgan Y'all. And then she's like, "So what other stuff do you do?" I'm like, "I don't, you know," I'm like, "Ask me anything. That's fine." And that's when we started talking more about that. She's like, "What about this? What about that?" And I just like information, and I like disseminating information, or it's that classic kind of retail thing. If I don't know, I'll find someone who does, and not be like, "I don't know. I know everything," which that sadly we have that sometimes. But more to the fact is it's just hard for people to actually, I don't know, relate. And I'm more of a closed door person. It's only been in these last kind of like 3-4 years where I'm like, okay, I need to talk about my life. I need to do this. I'm doing HAMA. I'm doing this stuff. I'm actually trying to become a person who is a influencer to help get these things across, but not necessarily for my sake, but to just get the information out there. And when I was Prince of the mid 2019, before COVID, everything happened, and I was going to an event and I got pulled over. I think it's 2019, right? I'm not crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so somewhere around there, I got pulled over on my way going to an event. And I was like, oh, my officer, then the story's like, "Hey, I'm going to have to search your car." So I'm like, you don't really have to, but I know this is going to be hard if I don't. And or so he went back and he came back. He's like, "I'm going to have to search the car." He's like, "Get out of the car." I'm like, is this really happening right now? And so this is all after all the things are going on. Things are high, not even the last 2 years. So it's not as high as they are. And I'm getting out there like, "Hey, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm wearing my Michael Jordan jersey. Like, I have my arms out, looking swole. I'm trying not to look too swole." And is a smaller guy, probably about my age. He's like, "Hey, so I'm going to have to handcuff you and put you on my car." And he was very nice about it. But he's like, "Because I have no backup while I'm searching in the car. You could get me and stuff." I'm like, "I done law enforcement stuff. I get it. You're being safe." But once I put that handcuff on, it was behind my back and I couldn't do it. I am a smart person that knows, do not run, do not park. And I was just like, your freedom's gone. And I didn't do anything wrong. And so those are those things where just comply. Hopefully it goes all right. And I'm like, "Hey, I have a crown in the back of the car. I got a bunch of swords." Stuff. And he wasn't like kind of like, "Sure you do." He was like, "Okay." And then like he looks, and after he saw some stuff, he started hastening his stuff. And he came back and he's like, "Thank you for complying. I'm sorry I had to do this part. I see that you're in the military. I was in too." And we talked a little bit, but still made me feel so bad. And Jessica was driving with my wife at that time. And I called later and I was like, "Hey, I'm okay, but I got pulled over, had to do this stuff there. It was rough, and I am fine, but I am stressed, and you just don't know if that was the time. And people are like, you're just being being dramatic. You don't know if that's the time, if they are going to shoot you, or if they had a bad day,
No.
or if they look like they think you're moving too fast, which is why people like keep your hands on the wheel. You actually have to have that talk, or put your hand on the top of the car. You put your keys. There's all these things people do, and that's white or black. I know some friends that do that there, but that's what I felt. And that story I actually put on the internet, which is so outside of my comfort zone at that point. I only did it because I was Prince, and I was like, I should tell people this. And my only solace was this time, like, if I get shot, the whole Midrealm's going to get you. So don't shoot me. But people like, thank you for reaching out. I've actually had some friends in the last couple of months that still say, like, hey, can I tell your story? I have a friend who's a teacher. I don't know if she's college level or a high school teacher, but she's like, can I share your story? Is that okay? I'm like, please. That's all right. Because it blew up for a big part for me on Facebook stuff. Like, had the 2,000 shares, all this other stuff. People were like, well, I don't know this person. This could be a lie. I know this stuff. Just like all this stuff came from it. I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Why would someone lie about that? Or also just the empathy. But there's a lot of people that said, hey, thank you for giving me this story. Like, cis white men, knights, those stuff. But it sucked that it had to be me to tell that story. It's like the Eddie Murphy thing where I don't think it was Eddie Murphy. Or no, it was David Chappelle. They got pulled over and he's like, I know who you are, Mr. Chappelle, or that part there. It's like, oh, it happened to Seto. I know Seto. So now my eyes are opened. And you're like, I'm glad it got there eventually, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a really, like, I vividly remember that. And like getting that phone call, like, me and Mike, you're freaking out. Like, we are super aware as people of color that people of color get into some really big trouble in the states that we live in for just being the wrong color. And we never know if this is going to be the person having the bad day, who's got unconscious or implicit bias, who's going to do something problematic. We never know. And I remember being so frustrated by the responses, because when Seto was like, should I share this? I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like, you should definitely tell your story. And I helped him as much as I could with it. And I'm like, the responses were just, so there, of course, people were overwhelmingly supportive, but there was so much like, I didn't know this happened and I can't believe this. And there was a lot of support because Seto's super well known and people love Seto because he's wonderful. But it bothered me on this level of like, how did you not know? Where the hell have you been? Like, why does it take this happening to someone who's universally beloved for you to finally like look around and be like, oh, I guess the Negroes had a point. Like, it's wild to me that was the response, and that was what it took from someone like Seto. And I did find it like very like, wow, like it has to happen to someone at this level before people are like, oh, and I'm like, no, we've been saying this for years. He's been saying this for years, but now he's Prince, so you're gonna go, oh, okay, I get it. And it's a little fetishy, a little tokeny, but mostly it's just frustrating because it's like, why does the worst have to happen before you acknowledge what we're saying to be true? Like, why does he have to go through this traumatic experience and then share it and make it palatable for everyone, for you to believe that, like, hey, we're scared when we have to drive through like rural Indiana and Ohio? Like, I don't know. It was just such a frustrating kind of combination of things that I'm clearly still not over.
Well, no, and nor should you be, right? Because I can even see the comments like, well, he complied. Why can't all people comply? Like, I can see the snowballing off of that, right? I can see the snowballing off of that. And I think about, one of the times that I was pulled over, if I had been in Seto's shoes, like if they had gone, I could have been doing nothing. I could have gotten out of my car. If they had gone to put handcuffs on me, I would have a trauma response and probably would run and probably would be shot in the back. So when people, even with your story, I can still hear the excuses about how this one thing happened to you, but
Mm-hmm.
it happened to you because of XYZ. It happens
Mm-hmm.
to other people because they don't comply. Other
Mm-hmm.
Black people, they don't comply, or other Black people, they seem suspicious. So, that's why they get shot. I don't know. I just hear that snowball. So even happening to someone that someone that you may respect, someone as well known as Seto, like it's never enough. It never seems to be enough.
No, and there's another instances, as you know, we've been pulled other times, and some people don't. Like I remember one of the time back when I was a squire, and I got pulled over by a cop, and then he was like checking stuff, and then he's like, come back here," and he said, "Sit in the front seat," and I was just like, "What?" Like that one happened. We're just having a talk right there. He's like, "You seem nervous," and I don't know what I said, but I was like, "Yeah, I think I am." But I was like, "Here's the time where," and you hear the horrible stories or comedy shows or anything, they hit you over the head and then they pour cocaine on you. Something like, "Got him," and I was just like, "I hope not," but I was just really more like, "Why am I'm in the back seat? I understand, so we can talk about this part, but in the front, what's going on?" And other stuff, pulled over, like you fit a description, and you're like, yes, I am Black.
Yeah.
So it's just hard. And to circle back towards representation yet again, to see more Black people in the SCA, it's hard to recruit those because you don't have the other Black people trying to get the other Black people. Because if you have a whole lot of white people go to something that's not, they're just gonna be like, "This isn't for me. Just feels weird." Just because the world has been as it is. I have friends that I've known for such a long time, and then sometimes I get these moments where I'm just in this white space, and it feels like I'm being so dramatic, but I'm not. I'm looking around, I'm just like, I'm glad to be accepted by these people, and this is a great time, but nobody here looks like me. And then sometimes it's just overwhelming. And I think getting a whole lot of Black people in wouldn't necessarily fix the problem either, because it wouldn't. It just for that to happen, the change would take for quite a while. But it's just that is what goes through, and that's kind of hard.
Well, it would take a shift in the balance of power. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, because I mean, statistically in the United States, people of color are going to outnumber white people very shortly here. People identify as people of color. That's not what's going to change the tides. Those statistics, those numbers aren't what's going to change the tides, right? It's a balance of power. And I think you telling your story, you being a knight and going and sharing that stuff in the circles where you are respected, and telling people like, it's not just me. I think those are the things that are going to make a difference. You, Jessica, doing your classes, and you talked about doing African garb at one point, and it wasn't really taken as anything other than DEI work, right? It takes us not being pigeonholed into these little boxes where people feel comfortable. It takes us being able to be our authentic selves in these spaces for it to change. But it can't just be a numbers game. That's not going to be sufficient.
Well, and it takes a climate shift, right? And I think we're seeing that shift. I do. I think that things are wildly different now in terms of cultural awareness than they were even 4 or 5 years ago. And I know that there are a lot of people that are like, it's not enough, and it's not. But to consider where we were years ago, I mean, it's going to take cultural shift to get away from even the little microaggressive type of behavior that prevents people from feeling comfortable. Like, I've been to an SCA event where parked directly next to gate. So as you go and you go to like pay and get in, there was a car with like a Confederate flag for the license plate. And I was kind of like I'm already like in kind of a rural area and I'm not feeling great. And it's right next to gate. And I'm like, is this a statement piece? Like, what is this? And my Pelican ended up going on my behalf because I was like, and she was like, I will do the thing. So she went and she tried to figure out like, hey, can we at least move the car so that there's not this huge Confederate flag as people are gating in? And we found out later it was the event steward's car, which is just one of those, okay.
Yeah.
And so you have this kind of loaded symbol, and it's very visible and potentially very unwelcoming, right? It's that kind of stuff that needs to be culturally not okay, because it's certainly not violating any rules, right?
No.
Like, you could never have gotten someone sanctioned or removed or anything for that. But there needs to be more awareness that, like, hey, there are communities in which this can cause some serious discomfort. So let's maybe think twice before parking this right next to gate.
Yeah, and that goes to more, once again, it depends how it affects the people. And some people are like, that's not what it means to me. They're like, but it means this to other people. And if it means that much to other people, you have to be willing to make I don't want to say concession, but you have to make a change. Just like if people are like, I don't want to see the fists around everyone, I'm like, okay, we'll maybe move some of those. It's just that whole having a dialogue, and people have to be willing to have that dialogue, which I think we're getting closer to, like you said. But then there's also education too, and I'm not going to get into other buzz topics on education, but this is just basic like world. I don't know if you're familiar with the Mercator map, which is the map that's most of the time used. If you take a look at it for viewers at home, check Mercator map. It's the projection of the map where USA looks about the same size as Africa. Europe is way bigger than Africa. It's not true. It's not the, and that's so hard because you say it's not true. You guys are like fake news. No, it's not true. Africa is bigger. Like you can fit all these things. You've seen the ones, how much. So if you look at the Gall's Peter map with Gall's GALLS Peter map, 2 words, that has more of the depiction of it, but it looks weird to any other eye. It looks stretched out. It looks like they're like, well, that doesn't look right, but that's more accurate of what the world actually is. So when you get people talking about African culture, this one, I mean, once again, Hama stuff, I try to like, they're like, I didn't know Africa had any martial arts. I'm like, any place where there's people and tribes and culture, you're going to want their stuff. They're going to want your stuff. You have to defend yourself from them taking your stuff. And sometimes you have to go take their stuff. Like wherever there are people, there will always be martial arts. It may not be karate, obviously, because that's Japanese more, but there's always going to be some kind of hand-to-hand. There's some weapons. So changing that and letting people know that there are cultures. What's the big saying they say? I didn't come from nothing. Like that needs to be there, but then also not rub other people the wrong way. Just be like, hey, you didn't come from nothing either. Like you can be proud of your heritage. I can be proud of my heritage. We can all get to learn stuff. Yeah, it's something that just needs to slowly be the dialogue. I mean, another little stupid little pointer thing. The Wandering Sword Project, non-for-profit I just made with some friends, where we talk about sword cultures from all over the world, and we're trying to get people to normalize. You can have European stuff, you can have Japanese stuff, you can have African stuff, you can have Filipino stuff. You can, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All the people, they're all cool, and you don't have to like it, but they exist. And this place is more like the SCA. Like you have SCA, you have LARPs, you have Bowhurt, you have HEMA, you have HAMA, you have lightsabers. I don't care. Find your sword fun, but stop pooping on everybody else's stuff. And it's just like, just enjoy and then have a discussion. And it's all right if you don't agree. I don't know.
Someone asked in the chat, so what can we do? And I mean, it's such a huge and it's a loaded question. One, if you're in here and you're watching the show, then you should probably go back and watch the rest of the episodes. We talk about that like over and over and over again, what allies can do, what we need to do to change. The second is it's exposure. People are afraid of what they don't know. I mean, so if we were to break down racism at its core, it comes down to fear. So whether it's a fear of losing power, the shift in power that happens as we work towards an anti-racist society, whether it's fear of you're being displaced and erased, whatever the case is, it all comes down to fear. And the way to fight fear, as especially speaking as a counselor, is exposure. Now, there are some times where I'm going to say, you need to be selective in the exposure, because there are places where I'd say, if you really truly want, let's just say, to talk about XYZ experience, this is the person you need to go to. This is probably not a person who's going to be helpful. I mean, so sometimes we need to be selective and kind of use the resources that are going to best suit the person. But it really, we need to have Seto, like, putting your stuff out there, Jessica, putting your stuff out there like you are, and people actually watching it, listening it, engaging in it, and not just, well, what now? Like we need exposure.
And I think also people being okay with the fact that exposure might result in some degree of discomfort, right? We talk about
For sure.
sitting with discomfort in a very abstract way. It is uncomfortable sometimes, and that's okay. And kind of next to that, adjacent. So we've all talked about kind of feeling like the safe Black person for people. And I want to make it clear that while there absolutely are folks who have kind of put themselves in positions where they're like, I'm going to be an educator, I'm going to deal with these questions, like you can come to me with anything you're curious about. Like, I know that we've put ourselves in that way in different spaces and in different capacities. But I can't tell you enough, you really can't consider folks, these are my safe people to, because we are still people and we are willingly putting ourselves out there. But that doesn't mean that we're not also carrying the exact same burdens as everyone else, right? It drives me up a wall. It is another one of those things that really makes me uncomfortable when people come to me and they say stuff that is almost racist itself, and I'm like, like, I'm sorry, like, let me check them. Oh no, I still am. What the hell?
Let me pass this one by you, Jess. It's like, what just happened?
When did I become like safe Black person number 3? Like, you can come to me with your like almost actively racist ass, like, oh well, she'll maybe no. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, and it's hard, right? Because they want to say most in general people want to have a question, but they don't think about how to say it in other ways, and you're just like, oh, I want to help, but then it's also exhausting that every second you're like, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about that? And it's just like the whole self-education, but there has to be reliable sources to go through, and sometimes it's honor that they're choosing you or myself or that part, but you're also like, I can't right now. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, because it requires you being on. Like, at the end of the day, I've done my 10-hour workday of helping, teach anti-racism work, and then come here and do the show, which is one of the few things that is giving me energy right now, by the way, is doing this show. But then the last thing I want to do is go to an event and it's like, hey, Nina, I'm like, at least let me get a drink in first. Or, if you're going to come into my space, like, maybe wait for an invitation. There have been times, so I will fully acknowledge, there have been times where I've had like a friend who's like, I'm watching the show and it seems really interesting, where I've been like, hey, if you have questions, come out to me. So, and I've never had anyone that I've said, if you have questions and you want to come talk to me. I've never had anyone take me up on that shit. It's only when this uncomfortable thing they want to talk about and now they have to face it that they want to come talk to me. But I have yet to have all those folks who are saying those things and asking these questions ever once come and talk to me and sit down one-to-one. And I think that's also problematic. If you really truly want to know and I'm offering it to you, you damn well better take it. Because I am literally offering you a safe space.
I just glanced at the chat and Sabad said, looking for validation and not answers. And damn if that's not the truth.
Yes.
There are so many times people bring stuff to me almost like they expect me to like rubber stamp it as just like,
you're a good white person.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we said, like, we don't speak for everyone, but we do speak for ourselves. So in some level, it becomes this catch-22 of they're like, oh, I got him saying it. Seto said it was okay and stuff. You're like, whoa. I said maybe this is okay with us, or you probably shouldn't, or just don't. And get a second opinion, get some things there, but also ask the person, can I? And then if they say no, let them say no. But I'll tell you a lot. When I get asked, and I don't want people to stop asking me questions. That's where we're starting.
Yeah.
But when you feel like you're putting on, like you said, you're on, you feel like you can't say no sometimes. And I try to get better about that personally. Yeah. I really try to be like, I can't right now. Get back to me in a day or this part. And I actually do use that. So don't, if anyone's ever like, oh, I was going to ask a question, now I won't. Still do, just
Oh, I've gotten to the point where I'm straight up. I'm like, I'm not the Lorax of Black people. I cannot speak for everyone else here. Like, I can give you my
you don't
opinion.
speak for the forest.
It just drives me nuts.
It's gonna be in my signature.
Not the Lorax.
Canadian signature.
Lorax.
No. So cultural appropriation it's the first class I ever taught anywhere within the DEI sphere. And I always teach it with like a hefty portion of the class devoted to like Q&A and discussion. Because I want people to be like, hey, like, you know, I'm trying to explore this. Do you have any suggestions here? Like, I want this to be a collaborative effort. And inevitably, half of the questions are, I did this here. Can you tell me if it was appropriative? And I'm like, oh, God. I'm not the arbiter of appropriation. Like, I can't tell you or absolve you of whatever. Like, this is ridiculous. And so much of the class focuses on how appropriation looks different for different cultures, how going to the source culture is always the best thing. And people are like, yes, I follow. Perfect. So was this appropriative? And I'm like I don't know what to give these people.
The other thing is, like, so sometimes, y'all, if you're sitting there and you're like, Jessica, so there's this one thing, and I think it might be racist, but I'm not sure. It probably is. You're feeling discomfort because you're getting that inkling that it really is racist, and you're asking Jessica to validate or, again, approve that feeling. But in general, the best response, if you have to ask, is this appropriate? It probably isn't, and don't freaking do it. Point blank. Go ask someone quietly, and not Seto or Jessica, unless you've asked them the shit.
Honestly,
I mean, it is though. If you get that, like, I don't know if this is right, you know, it's like you pull something out of your fridge. This is by the use date. It's smelling kind of funky. Do you like taste it to find out if you're gonna get food poisoning? So okay, so maybe people.
No, okay, no. It's a test.
General, if it smells funky, you're not gonna eat it, right? It's the same principle. If it seems funky and you're like, I don't know, don't do it. Go do the research. Man, I'm not an encyclopedia. Oh,
that's hard. A lot of people just don't do research these days. Or they find one thing and then they leave it at that, which is the crux of the internet. If you look for what is it? The best thing about the internet is it gives people a voice, but then the bad thing about the internet is it gives everyone a voice, and that sometimes can be problematic. Or the bad thing about the internet is that you can find the answer that you're looking for somewhere because it's just there. And they'll be like, "Look, I found this one article." It said this. You're like, "Who were the sources of that? Who were the people?" And this is anything, not just about Black people or racism. It's just like, oh, like find this one and then maybe look for 5 other sources or look at this part or.
Confirmation bias is real. You will find it. If you want your answer, you will find it. You will find that one article that says your shit is right. Your shit don't stink.
Yep.
Try again.
And you're like, wait, that's
try again.
We're not monolithic, and no marginalized group is monolithic. So there will absolutely be people that are like, absolutely, yes, I'm about it. But that doesn't mean that the vast majority of the rest of that group is not going to be like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
No,
absolutely.
And it's just part of navigating. Like this is a really difficult thing to convince people of, but it's not simple. It's all very complex. We're all unpacking a lot of different things from a lot of different perspectives. And so you may not get straight answers, and you may just need to make good choices, but that doesn't absolve you of doing the work to get there.
No, and there'll always be exceptions to the rules. I hate absolutes. There's never going to be, well, this is always how it is. This part, like, no, this may be something you've encountered. My encounter is different from Jessica's, it's different from Nina's, it's different from Spa's, it's different from every other person because I am me.
Right. And I'm going to give just a really simple example. So the terms African American, Black, there are folks that I've talked to who prefer Black. There are folks that prefer African American. if you were to ask me, I prefer Haitian American because that's my heritage. That's how I identify. And it's not going to bother me if you call me Black or African American. For some folks, it will. The thing is, we know we're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I'm sure I've made 3 on this show already, and it's okay. But if you are told otherwise, like if Jessica says, I have preference for, right, do the best thing, which is thank you for letting me know, and following that in the future. You know, I think that's the other piece of it, is we acknowledge people are going to make mistakes. We have to, we're human, right? And I'd rather you make a mistake and talk to me about it in a quiet, like pull me away and talk about it, than do something that is going to really, because you can't take the impact back once it's happened. You can't. There is no putting it back in the box. And so if you really have good intent to do these things, do your homework. Don't, rely on other people to be your source of information, and know that you're going to get it wrong, and that's okay.
I agree with it wholeheartedly.
But it's hard. It's hard when you get called out. I've been called out. Today I was called a sellout at work. And it was it. And to give context, I mean, the guy was right. We were talking about, to be successful in white supremacist organizations. I should not say white supremacist organizations. I should say organizations that are built on supremacist cultural pieces, not values, but you know what I'm saying. In order to be successful, I've had to navigate those systems, and I've had to, in some instances, be a cog in that wheel. And I know that I am doing that. I know that I am contributing to those systems. So I know, and I can call myself out and say that I've contributed to these white supremacist systems. And I know that I can be a sellout. But I also know, as we talked about in the pre-interview, that in order to do change, you need to bring people along and not shout and not yell and say, you must do this thing. How do you think that this is going to look for the SCA in the coming years? Even if you don't, you could even take it less broad than that. Be like, what's that going to look like for Seto in the next couple of years?
No, I think that's good. Along? I think you can say it in the first aspect, but then, of course, speaking for myself, it's that whole myself keep on doing the research I want to, still remain involved in the SCA, still also remain involved in other aspects of, I hate to say real world, but actually academic of sorts, academic of culture, and then bring that into the SCA, as well as making the stigmas of like, oh, you're in the SCA, you know nothing, and vice versa, you're out there, you know nothing. So actually trying to bring this equalizing force to, people are all different. There are some people in the SCA who are kooks. I'll just be honest, like some people are just kooky. And there are some people that actually, I'm like, they are actually a professor at this place and they do all the stuff here and they happen to play the SCA, but because they're playing the SCA, are they now invalid? No. So build this legitimacy in itself and the people around us and actually try to have more of a dialogue, have more of a conversation, and then just have not quite the talking stick, but like, be like, hey, you asked my question. Let me evaluate this and give this to you. And then, yes, if I go too long, yes, it's time. Allow me to interject, or just basic mentoring. And I used to be a mentor in high school. I love doing mediating, where it's like, hey, I have a question, like, have your hand up for like a sec. And then like, so you don't forget what point you're on and then help that way. And I think that will help us in the future. I think it will build a better dialogue. I think it will make things better. I think we'll get more interesting people in. I'd say we're already interesting people, but we'll get more people in. I think that will help as a broad. And myself, I'm just going to keep on. The SCA used to be I don't say only my life. I did a lot of different things. Like I do boxing, I do other things because I love martial arts. That is most of my life. But SCA used to be more my centric on that. Now SCA is about 50% of that. Now I do other stuff as well, but I'm still doing a lot. I'm just not going to be doing as much in the SCA solely. And that also needs to be not villainized or trivialized. Some people are like, well, you got to do the SCA and only SCA. I'm like, to become like a peer or something, like you need to go to 3 events a month, 4 events a month. You need to fight this stuff to become a knight. You need to try. I'm like, or you could be a good person, fight well. I'm just talking about from knight side, like fight decently well, be at least carrying some part, and then maybe we knight them. It depends. Don't make them wait 20 years. Something this part there. It depends on the person. It depends on our standards. And two, last thing before we get more, if there is a person that happens to be, this is once again armored side or rapier, either or, who's just a stick jock or a rapier person who just only comes to fight, that's not bad. People come to just do arts and sciences and then they leave, and we don't hate that. People come to do their one niche. They pay their money. They depart. They don't have to become the Renaissance man or woman that you want them to be and be the poster child of the SCA. They can come and just do that, and as long as they're not being a jerk, that's fine. Like, don't run them out. I met some people in the steel community who now do more steel stuff because it is more of a you fight, you come, then you go home. There might be after parties later, there might be other things, but they're mainly just coming to a competition, like a track meet, doing their thing, and then going back. The SCA, they're like, you have to come to this track meet, do all this stuff, and then you have to come and do all this stuff too. You have to. And it's like, no, you don't have to.
Well, you did some of the stuff. You could, you said you had night terrain. What was that journey like as you were coming? You know, you think about your whole journey as you're new to the SCA, not only new to the SCA in this concept of swords and sticks and crowns. And I know I'm being facetious and you know,
no, it's fine.
What was your journey like from then, and how were you perceived, and what was your experience like, you know, through your reign to now? Because you have a lot of experience in terms of that journey that people take and sometimes looking for, and kind of, I mean, in some folks' mind, right, the ultimate piece is being reigning. So what was that all like for you?
Well, it's all different because when in the SCA we're recreating culture, but we create our own cultures. The Midrealm culture is more so and this is changing. It used to be like you say you want to become a knight, but you wouldn't say I'm going to become a knight. After a certain point, I play a lot of video games. I do a lot of different things. You can see how pieces lay. You can see how you go from track one to be this. I'm like, okay, I need to be a good fighter. Okay, I need to do arts and sciences. Okay, I need to do service. Now, granted, I do these things joyously, or I lied to myself in order to make it joyous, but it's more on the latter. I enjoy doing it because, like, I like serving. So that's a different, interesting point for you're like, I don't want to serve because I want to be perceived as a slave. Because of my group where I had it, a lot of those people were service households. So that never even caught in my head. But your point is completely valid. So
and now I do a whole bunch of service, but that's like, as a newcomer, you're like, I'm a Black person. I want to like serve people drinks. Like, the fuck? In white people world, like.
And that can be like it's all about, you know, like me. I've been a waiter, server, like that. That's just what I did. So, but yours is completely valid. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. No, most of the time. Yeah. And this one is like paid for friendships. So, but and that's what when people are looking at stuff. This is the exact discussion that we can have where her point is valid, my point is valid. That's how she felt. However, I got knighted in 6 years. I probably did a little bit too many events. I did an event like every weekend, or I at least did 3 a month, like until maybe the winter. Normally, like around here, this would be the time. Like, I don't like traveling in the winter. It'd be hard, but I'd still go to something and I'd run the circuit. You say I had to go to these fighting things, the things I have to do. Now, granted, my knight, Sir Vargas, or my other friend, basically brother knight, Sir Ish, would be like, get in the car. We're doing stuff there. I travel with Kyoji back times, but towards the end, it was just me getting in the car, driving, doing the stuff, putting a lot of time in. And I look back at that. I'm not bitter. It's just that this is what I feel I needed to do to get it as fast as possible, or try to, because then you get to this point where you're doing this stuff, you know, you're beating people up, not like mean wise, you know, you're being a good fighter, you know, you're upper level, you know, you're doing these service, you know, stuff. And then you're just like, why haven't they knighted me yet? What am I doing wrong? What's going on? Yeah. And that part, especially after being king and learning, it depends on the person. Like in our game, you can have all your Qs like lined up. Maybe some people in the Shiv don't like you. Maybe the king and queen don't like you. But the main point, the king and queen can make whoever they want at that point.
Yeah.
But they listen to the order most of the time, unless they feel really strong about something. And my king, Cadigan, Blades, and Anne Marie, they were very nice to me, and they were awesome. And he's been watching me since I was a little squire. And he was kind of like, nope, I want to make this guy a knight after this one point. He's doing good. He hasn't messed stuff up. And they knighted me. Which is funny because he's the left-handed, and we can get into the whole Buffett thing some other time. But to me, that was a chivalrous thing. It's like, okay, this is the last blow you receive unanswered. And I mean, I'm a boxer. We get hit in the head for fun. So I'm just like, this one is an honorable hit in the head. Sweet. And then after that part, it's like, this is a great honor. And like, you're waiting there, like, may this be the last blow you receive an answer. I'm like, okay, here's going to come from the right side. Wham! Left side. And I was like, oh, I forgot he was left-handed. So you're bracing for this side and get hit here. It was really funny.
Okay.
But yeah. But that in itself.
I get it.
Yeah. And then itself, like, it's different. But back to after I got to being a knight, 6-year stuff, a lot of work and just traveling, having fun for the most part. And then you like get to the top of the hill. You're like, ooh, I'm knighted. And then you look at all these other hills, mountains. You're like, oh, there's so much more to do because it doesn't just end there. But that's how I see my martial arts path. Because if you get a black belt, you don't end there. You don't say, well,
right.
I mean, some people do, but you're like, that's it. Never done it. No, you keep on learning, keep training. For me to become king, I was like, I need to practice. I need to travel so I can beat most of these people. I need to have a plan when I go in there as far as like just being comfortable. And it just so happened to be my day when I won 50-year Midrealm 2019. And I won. And it was like the weirdest thing for the first time. You're like, oh, wow, that's it. Cool. Now I'm Prince. And then now the show starts. And you're like, oh, now basically. And I tell people, my other friends that do skill stuff, they're like, so you do the SCA. So you have a name that you use and you pretend to be this. I'm like, actually, I go by Seto all the time just because people just call me Seto. And I'm like, actually, you become, at least for the Midrealm and most ones, you become a VIP, vice president of a non-for-profit for your area. And you have all these things to do. You have coffers in your kingdom. You have all these other meetings that you need to do once a month for Kyria. You now become like a business person because you beat someone in the head with a stick really well that day. Or you didn't take the other hits and you rhino-hide your way through. Congratulations. And that's the weird part of our game, which is like, neat.
Do you feel like people's behavior towards you shifted throughout your journey from like not peer to royal?
Oh yeah. And I think most of it, I mean, that's life, right? I don't think it's only because I'm black or people, but there's a story where Sabah, I was maybe in, because I was in really, I mean, now I'm a big dude, but I used to be in really, really good shape right after I got out of the military and I could run circles around people. But I toned it down because I didn't want to be seen as a braggadocious or just being show-offy. And I remember going for unbelts, which is this big thing. Like if you're not a knight or you're unbelted, and there's unbelted champions. And I got on the alternate team, like the second year I was in the SCA, which is some people fight for. I mean, now the culture's changed a little bit different, but it used to be like why is this person here? And Sabah told me, he's like, yeah, I was in the meeting. And they're like, why do you want him in there? Is it because he looks like you? And I was like, what? I'm like, who said that? And he's like, can't tell me who said that, or he chose not to. But you're still just like, somebody said that. And I think their opinion changed me eventually. But there were some people that were like, who's this person coming in here just beating people up or doing this differently? I mean, you learn, but that was a thing. And you're like, Or I had the thing once where I know I was doing better and I wasn't knighted yet. And someone's like, yeah, well, you're really good. I think you need to do something a little bit different, but you seem really athletic, but I think you should do something else different. I'm like, I'm really athletic. Are you really saying I'm too black? Or are you really just saying I am too athletic and I should maybe hone my skills better and not throw so many shots, which is a valid strategy. If you could throw all day and do the stuff there, fine. That was another time where you're like, interesting. But people then treat you nicer eventually. You are in charge. You can do a lot of different things. There's a lot of different things you can make happen. It doesn't mean you're in charge forever, which some people forget. I mean, to me, becoming king and queen of any kingdom, you are the greatest servant of that kingdom. You're there to give awards. You're there to help people. You're there to make other people's dreams come true. I mean, you can still show a narrative. Like I told the story of Yasuke a little bit because people, after me doing classes and other stuff, they're just like, oh, you're actually an African persona? I'm like, I've been saying that the whole time. So I'm like, I want to do this for my part of my reign. I'm not going to throw on too heavy, but I'm telling the story of Yasuke and Japanese culture and this part. Like that's going to be, for the most part, it's all about the people. That's cool. So yeah, it's interesting. And then people listen if they won't. And then after they're done, there are some people that are just like, bye. But then there are some really cool people that are just like, oh, that was really cool. You did all the stuff for me and I really appreciate that. And you're like, I don't remember who you are. I'm sorry. I was really tired that day, but I'm glad I helped. Genuinely.
You made an impression on people, and that's what matters.
Yeah. And then as long as you're honest with that part, I'll just be like, I don't remember. I'm sorry. But I'm like, it's really nice to meet you again. Like, that's cool. Tell me some more. And I think I don't know where I put that, but there was some part where we had a Shiv calendar where it was like all these virtues, and I got to be on the calendar, which was really cool. And even though kindness is not an actual chivalric virtue, but I'm like, I want kindness. And I talk about how kindness is showing mercy in battle. It can be, or more importantly, it's like actually invoking the golden rule and meaning it. Or when you actually ask somebody how is their day, you actually listen. And that part where most of the time they're like, how's your day? People have already checked out. They're on to the next thing. They're like, these are the things I say. And it started to like make people something weird, like, well, my day is really weird and I had this happen. And I'd actually be like, but what happened afterwards? And like, oh, you're still talking more about this. You genuinely care. This is crazy. And I think that helps more. But if you don't have the stomach for it and you don't have it in the day, don't say it. Don't lie. Just be like, I hope you're having a good day. I'm really just tired. I'm going through things.
And it's okay to be unapologetically a person.
Yeah.
You, I mean, you have more. I'm sure you do, because I do want to, though, before we move on to maybe a couple other things, you know, I've been thinking a lot about awards and people of color, because for some of the kingdoms, we've had a couple people on here who have been the first person of color in their kingdom, or like the third person of color in their kingdom to get XYZ. And I was actually talking to my partner about it last night, and recognizing that there are barriers to any awards. I think there are these nebulous values that people want to see, and they change from kingdom to kingdom, from area to area, depending on who's sitting in the room and who's not, who has a lot of voice and who doesn't. And I still think that there are barriers to people of color. I wasn't able to quite articulate them last night, but I wanted to see if, you've gone through the knighthood, you have a peer, were a royal peer. What are some of the things you see that might be barriers, or is this all in my mind? Because I think about like Jessica, for instance. You told me you only had an AOA, and I went, WTF, like, how is that possible? And in my head, I can see like two scenarios where someone says, oh, well, she has everything. She has all the things, what would we do next? But I still think there's something that, I mean, there aren't that many Black people. So
go ahead.
Really quick. So I did only have an AOA when I got this job, but I will say that, like, I definitely am not someone who's under-recognized. I'm just really recent to the SCA. Like, there are people who are, and I don't ever want to.
You're 6 years in? What are you in? You're 6 years in? Because you got in when I got knighted. 5th year, yeah.
Or
that's about.
Yeah, we're approaching my like 5th anniversary, which is, I guess, 2022. My first event was in 2017. So like, I am super not under-recognized, and I definitely
no. And I get that, because
right,
we're talking about,
there's a dichotomy, right? Like, people of color are hyper visible, but also being hyper visible can be good or bad.
Yeah, and I'll always preface, I always try to show both sides of the coin, but it's not invalidated. The SCA has this really weird thing where they just sometimes don't see that once again, going back to the research, they don't use the research and look to see what this person has. And they either assume they have all of it or that part, and that's across the spectrum. But then being Black or being a person of color, I know for myself, whenever I see another Black knight, I'm just like, ooh, I gotta go meet them. Because there's like, oh my God, I don't know, gotta be definitely under 30. Definitely, I mean, I think knights in the SC, I think was like 2% or maybe point something. I don't know, it's weird. Like, you'd say there's been so many different people and there's only this many percents are knights, period. And then you hit that part, and then there's how many of them are actually Black, period. Like, and you meet this and you try not to have this even fetishized on our own part. Like, I know Tamiki, when I first became Prince, I wanted to talk to him more. Duke Tamiki from, I think he's on, is he on Stoyor? I'm horrible.
Kaid now?
Kaid now. So at that point, yeah, I think you're right. But he's like, I didn't know if you wanted to listen to an old guy like me. I'm like, you're like, there's only a few of us. I of course I want to hear what you have to say. I may not listen. I may not do what you say, but I want to hear it. I'll definitely listen. But I may not do it. But I want to hear what you say. And I've just always been that kind of a person. Like me, actually, when I was in the military, we had a lieutenant colonel who was high up there, and he was black. And I remember asking, like during the class, I asked him weird questions like, what did you do in high school? And everyone's just like, ah! Why are you asking that in this middle of this meeting? To me, it was just cool to see another person of color in a high level of rank. And I'm like, could I become that? I'm just a humble beginning. I lived in a place this part. I probably can't do that. He's probably been silver spooned or just a pedigree level. It's nice to know where people came from for me. And I think most people feel that way. I know when I won, I'm the second person of color, second black person to win in the Midrealm. The only other person before that was Jafar, who is no longer with us and died like really, really early before I even got into society. And he won. He won once, and then he was on the throne the second time, and he died. So he died on the throne. So at this point, I used to joke with Jessica, and I'm like, if I die while I'm on the throne, tell no black people to ever win in Midrealm. Don't do it. It's cursed. Which I say that just Jafar, but it was really legit where. And I actually invoked Jafar before I fought the day. I was like, please, if you're like, I had a little piece of his lamellar. Someone gave it out. I believe it was his wife, Kenna, or his consort, Kenna, gave it like a Penzik before. So I had that little piece. I'm like, please let me win. I really want to. And I just felt like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really invoked this. And I was at Penzik at one point. I saw someone else and he looked at, like, some people actually called me Jafar, which is like, that seems like a cruel joke, but I think they're really just confused. I don't know. They're like, are you Jafar? I'm like, no, I am Seto. And then another time, like, I used to be Jafar's LARP dad, or like in this SCA, I was his father, even though we had no relation. And it was just, we were walking down Penzik Street, like one thing, he like looked at me, like, you know, I don't know if people understand that whole kind of nod, you're just like, sup, or like a little nod this way. And he just looked at me first, but then he also noticed my crown. He's like, he literally said, sound like this is like something out of Lord of the Rings. He's like, that's the crown of the Midrealm. Have you known that there hasn't been a black prince in the crown of Midrealm since Jafar? I'm like, yes, I do know. What is your name? And then we talked, and it was just so like I'm just like, this is so weird, but really interesting. But to me, it was a big deal. And then there are some people that's like, well, you won, you're prince. It's not a big deal. I'm like, yeah, you're seeing that because there's been all these other kings and queens before. I'm the 100th king of the Midrealm, or 100th reign. There might be one, and to me, it's a big deal, and it happened to be a black person, which is really cool. But yet some people, they weren't through out of maliciousness. They're like, well, what's the big deal? And I'm like, because it doesn't happen often.
Because representation.
Or twice. You can say often. It's happened twice.
Yeah. I mean, people of color, we all notice when we look at spaces and don't see ourselves there, and we all wonder if there's a reason why.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely makes a difference. And like when we talk about potential barriers for people of color, that's part of it. Not being able to see yourself reflected in these spaces. Why? It's the first thing you wonder, even if it's unconscious. Like, why aren't people who look like me here? Why can't people who look like me succeed in this space? And yeah, no, it's. I also, like, obviously I'm way after when Jafar was here, but I hear about Jafar all of the time. And part of it is, I think, he was just a very great person that people loved, and it's tragic to have lost him so young. And part of it is just that there weren't a lot of other Black folks to point to and be like, hey, this was the person who did great things in the Midrealm and had this high achievement. Like, there's just no one else. And so it's a little weirdly uncomfortable sometimes.
It's tokenish, like I said.
It feels very tokeny. It does.
Yeah. And it's just hard. So you just try to go through with it. And like I said, people notice. I mean, once again, when you go to Penzik, we always have a joke. We're like, there's numbers 15, 13. Right. Like, we're keeping track of how many we see. I know my friend Stephanie Henry, when she first got into the SCA, I'm like, welcome to the Midrealm. You were a Black person number 7. And she's like, 7? I'm like, yep. Sabah's like 2 or 3. There's someone else before. I'm number 5. And it was a real thing. What was I going to say? It was just, yeah, it's just interesting.
But my number assigned to, she was like, that one's 6, and that's 8. I'm this. You're this. I'm like,
No, there's an SCA video. I think it's called The Dream, and it has a whole bunch of people in it. Well done, well done. And at the same time, I was like counting the number of people of color in it. I think at the end we agreed that there were 6. There were some people who I wasn't quite sure if it was a person of color or not, especially when you put garb on and face is covered. It's hard to tell sometimes, but I mean, we notice those things if I'm out in public. So like I can be out in public and be like, oh, there's another Black person in Salem. Like, holy shit. Pigs are flying, hell's froze over, like what happened? But it goes back to that representation matters. And
yes.
I want to go on record as saying, like, I don't think that a person of color didn't get an award because they are a person of color. I do feel very strongly that there are barriers, and I like I said, I'm not sure what they are, but there are things that contribute to the fact that if we're looking at parity, so I was explaining parity the other day, there's certain percentage of Black people in the SCA. If there's a certain percentage of XYZ in the SCA, you should expect, in theory, given its complications, that there would be X percentage of peers that are Black or Asian or whatever group we want to look at. Now, knowing that awards again are convoluted because it depends on who's in the room talking for you and all of these other things, it just seems like there's still parity is lacking.
So what's really interesting, and it's this weird kind of, it almost seems counterintuitive. So people of color are actually overrepresented in peerage in comparison to population, right? Like if you just took population of white folks to population of white peers versus population of people of color to population of POC peers, there's far more, but the retention for people of color is so low, and the continued engagement for people of color
that makes sense
tends to be very, very low. And so the people who do stick around are people who are so heavily invested and so active that they end up pursuing paths to peerage. Whereas a lot of other folks just kind of, they'll be here for a little while and they'll come every once in a while, and then inevitably it's just not the right fit for whatever reason. And so it's this really insidious thing where we need to look at basically who's not here and why aren't they here, right? It's not necessarily that there's vast swaths of people who are overlooked, although there absolutely are people who are overlooked. Absolutely. But it's more, why aren't they here anymore? Or why aren't they here to begin with?
Well, I'm glad to hear there's parity. That answers the question.
It's a weird kind of parity, though. It's a parity that reveals a much deeper problem.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, too, stepping away from the SCA just a little bit, let's talk about reenactment. Reenactment in general, it's not very people of color centric. And even that's why I'm doing the HAMA stuff now, like there's still not a whole lot. There's definitely more African-American or Black people or people of color doing it because it's from the culture, but still trying to bring people into it. They're like, this is technically for you. And that they're still like, well, I don't want to learn about this. And it feels weird. You're like, but why? And it can be, you don't have to, but they still feel like they can't sometimes. We're just really curious. Or they think it's really cool, but then they don't know. Or doing the steel stuff now. There's like a handful of steel people of color, people doing steel, HMB, ACS, Armored Combat Sports, any of the Bohurt, they call it. There's a handful of us. And it's interesting because now I start getting more people like on my Instagram and other things. They're like, how do I get into this? What's going on? And I'm always like, check this out. Look, see it in your groups. But there's always never a lot of other groups in their area, which is even harder for them to make them feel comfortable, which then puts it on. I mean, I can see it wrong. Puts it on me. I'm like, well, I want to make a group that they feel comfortable in. But that takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. Or we have a group called the Knights Wakanda, which is all people of color steel group. I mean, we're more of a team. So, and if you think about all the Bohort teams in the world, I mean, there might be some other people of color that aren't Black, but we'll say we're definitely the all Black steel group. And I think I'd be hard pressed to say we're the only one that has that part, which to be like, we're the only one out of all that part, that's explicitly that's kind of crazy. And you're not trying to be exclusive at this point, but we're trying to actually fit something that we all feel something of, right? Doesn't mean we won't have like a white. Yeah, it doesn't mean we won't have like a White Wolf of Wakanda sometime. And there's a Bucky having come in, but it's like this is so interesting. Yet you kind of get pushed back on both sides. You're like, why are you guys making your own group on that part of this? And we haven't really run into that yet, but it's only a matter of time, or you see, because you're like, because everything else, this is made that way, or it's obviously feels that way.
And we're not the only reenactment society to continuously, right? Like, if you're familiar with Dickens Fair, right, there was a huge issue with folks of color basically coming forward and being like, hey, there's a ton of problems here. And they went mostly unheard until they went to drastic measures and really took things to an extreme place because no one was listening.
Yeah. And that's, go ahead.
All the time.
And there's another one, like on the other side of the coin there too. I've done, especially doing the Water and Sword project, I try to do almost everything, or at least try at least once. And I went to a only Viking reenactment one, which people are like, white supremacists are always worried about. They were really super receptive. It was called Yamsborg. And I went to an event in Missouri, and I had a good friend, actually, Raymond Rowe, WWE wrestler superstar, part of a tag team, and his wife, Sarah Rowe, who's a WWE diva. They just have a kiddo, so she's not doing so much stuff right now. But they very much so were like, hey, have you had any problems? Like, is there anything? Because you better let us know, because we feel, and it felt that way. So I felt very safe. But once again, that's me being me, and either finding this astronomical part where you get people that are being super nice, and people knew that I was Seto from the SCA. So once again, that's Seto being Seto now coming to something else. And it's like, well, I hope this gets the, I'm not saying I know they would treat anyone like that way, but you hope that everyone gets that same exposure elsewhere. So, and I remember seeing like the only other Black Viking, his name is Ortiz. Like, I just looked at him and I was like, oh, another Black Viking. Like, because we're all Vikings at this one, we're all doing Viking stuff. And I kind of want to be like friends with them. I'm just like, can we, and you don't want to be like, he's like, man, you don't know me, or you don't have the credibility this way. And I'm like, so we're just, he's like, so I was like, yeah, and he has dreads. He's so cool. I love Ortiz.
It's the nod.
It's that conundrum where
nod.
Yeah. I'm like, can we be friends? I want to be friends.
Well, and so to underscore something you said, because we always kind of get back to the allyship conversation at the end of the night. And people like to ask, like, what can we do? One of the things that you mentioned, right? Like going up to someone and being like, hey, we know that there are potential. We are safe. You can come to us. Have you experienced anything? Acknowledging that there is an issue and then putting yourself out there as like not only aware but willing to do something about it if there is a problem is such a big deal, right? Like I don't care for the type of allyship where we just pretend everything's okay and hope that nothing goes wrong, because like I've talked to some of my friends about, I'm like, you assume that you will see it if there's a problem. And let me tell you that most microaggressions are done quietly and privately, and most people who are going to behave in problematic ways are not going to do so extremely openly. So this whole like, well, we shouldn't like scare people off. They know that there's something to be worried about. They are familiar with what it means to be part of a marginalized group moving through the world. What you can do is acknowledge that these things exist and then position yourself to be able to help them should there be a problem.
And I believe in a heartbeat, if something actually came and I said like, hey, it wouldn't have been lip service. They'd be like, who, where, let's go. Because that's the other part of it, right? You actually say that, they're like, but did they really mean it that way? You're like, you asked me. I told you. But no, I know they would have been like, we'll take care of this. We'll be back. So, yeah.
Did I early segue? Can we go to allyship now?
Yeah.
Sure.
I was going to say, I'd like to move to allyship after I get like a WWE escort. I think that's just fantastic.
Yeah, dude, they're so cool.
I want that. But really, what, you know, in your mind and in your journey and drawing upon all of your experiences, what are some things that, you know, people listening, people who are going to watch this later, people who want to be allies or want to find the path to allyship, what can they do?
Once again, self-education, Do yourself, I mean, if you do have some people of color that you do trust, yes, ask them one-on-one, be like, hey, can you show me where to get started? But they may not have enough spoons to help put you in that right direction. So don't feel bad, like, well, I asked them, they didn't tell me anything. What help for that? Because they might be getting asked that all the time. So try to do your own research, go and do different kind of sources, pull some from this way, pull some from opposing views, not necessarily opposing views, just different thoughts. Like when you think about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, they didn't go the same way. Just different thoughts to give a space to be given, or a space that they can talk and don't necessarily speak for them unless they're actually asking for you to be like, hey man, could you speak up and help me in this part? That's another big thing. I think a lot of people want to be allies, but it's like helping them be good allies. So I think that's a start. I mean, you go on some other ones. I know you talk about it every time, but I'm trying to think about something else.
No, I think you hit the big ones. We're tired. I mean, like, I started this show and I was like, I don't even know how we're gonna get through this, because Jessica, myself, and Gigi, I mean, we're all doing all of these other things and thinking about starting a show. I'm like, it's a lot of work. And so we all have these other things that are happening. So when y'all are watching these shows, like, there's a lot that goes into it. And it's not just about, making sure that Nina's tech issues get resolved, because they're not going to. And there's a lot of, I know, everyone. There's a lot of
so optimistic, though.
Someday the tech will work. There's a lot of emotions that we carry just walking out the door. And so we are going to be tired sometimes, and we may not have the spoons. And so part of it is helping us have the spoons by doing that work with us or for us. And I think one of the other ones I'm going to reiterate from last time, it's not just doing the work when you want to, when it's hard for us, it's doing the work when it becomes hard for you. When someone is, questioning your choices for sticking up to microaggressions, when you're getting the shit from the people around you who are like, why would you do X, Y, Z? That's when you can start calling yourself an ally. Well, that's when I will start considering you an ally. When the going gets rough, you are still here fighting the fight with me.
Yeah, because there's some times, like, I have worked some different projects. So I've been doing more stunt work in the professional field. I'll do some other things there. Where there are times where some people were like, I think this is not quite what I was looking for. Would there really have been a Black person here at this time? And you're like, it's the middle ages, or especially when you get some parts anywhere. I mean, Yasuke the African Samurai, we'll just say that anyone can get anywhere. And then you're saying that just because it's outside of your thought or vision for the show, that it makes you uncomfortable. This is where you get into, and I hate to say it, like, I don't hate to use the word whitewash, because things have been whitewashed. I just saw this one thing where it shows a picture of a pharaoh guy and he looks Caucasian as all get out, and they have like, they're like you're like textbooks from this point, you're like, but there are some things where people just outside of their cognitive dissonance, or they just, I don't know how you say it just doesn't make them feel right. And it's their story, they can tell their story. But when you do these things, this actively harms in this way. And then now if I come at you later to be like, well, that's wrong because there could have been a Black person there, you just don't want to. You can't be mad at me for being like, oh, how dare you feel me such a way? Like, no, you made that choice. And that is something where that has happened to me. And luckily, all my coworkers and all the people part of my business and all the people with the Wandering Sword, especially, they were like, what do you want to do, man? You want to walk out? You want to just like, I'm like, no, let's make this one happen. We'll see. And luckily everything got better. And that person was very apologetic, and they saw, but it happened.
Yeah.
Which it fuels me more to do it. I'm like, you're not running me out. I'm going to keep on doing more things, and I'm going to get other people to do more things. And I pity the fool who tries to stop me.
Well, and it's factually wrong, right? Like,
yeah.
For the umpteenth time, there were people of color in medieval Europe. Obviously, like,
I've had the itch to just be like,
part of a historical society.
Bill.
And you have to keep reiterating that, like, of course there were people of color. Like, what? We're not aliens. We came from like 300 miles that way. Like, what?
I don't see them in any of the pictures.
But there
I know. I'm just like, this made me, me joking.
Yeah, no. Sometimes I just want to be like, do you know there's white people in Africa? Like today, did you know there's white people in Africa? I wonder.
Yeah.
I mean, no, but I wonder because I wonder if they're the same people.
I mean, there are some people that are like, no.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
You see a white person and you're like, you're from Africa, but you're not. You're white.
That's interesting.
There are white people in Africa. Like
that happens. That happens.
You know it does.
Well, people think there's like this weird like binariness to it, where I'm like, no. What you define as a person of color is actually everyone else, which is most of the world.
And like you said, it goes to allyship and it goes to tokenism. We're trying not to get back in there, but representation, and let's roll my lightsaber around. With like the SCA, or not SCA, Star Wars, we're like, well, I mean, why don't you dress as Mace Windu? I mean, he was a black guy. And like, because you think about like, name another black Jedi, people are like, I don't know, Mace Windu. So it's like, these are the only ones you have to. And you're like, I don't want that. Even though I do like purple, and a purple lightsaber is cool. But then you're just like, you're being that way. And you're like, or actually, we talked about briefly, Idris Elba and Harder They Fall, the whole Western where it's predominantly black people. And it's honestly a misconception where a lot of cowboys were black. And some people will look at this, granted, it's not for kids. It's like, it's very aggressive, very gory, but it's pretty realistic. And some people are going to be like, oh, they had to make something else just for them. And you're like, no, it's just representation. Like there's not, other than Django Unchained and a few other things, and the fact that they actually they have all historical people that were alive at one point. They may not have interacted at all this point, but they all exist. Bass Reeves, Cherokee Bill, Nat Love, all these things. Mm-hmm. Rufus Buck. I've watched it twice now. I'm just like, oh, I like this. But
that's your thing. It's all good.
It's kind of cool.
Well, it's like the Christmas movie.
People think it's forced, and I'm like,
yeah.
Look at your implicit bias, just all out for us all to see. Ew, put it away. Because like, yeah, I'm like, how is it forced to have people of color? I don't know if you know that we were there, but surprise.
Yeah. But that's part of the allyship, just being like, hey, did you know, and this is hard, because it puts allies in a situation where if they pop up, the first thing they're like, hi, I'm an ally. Did you know there's a black Western about black cowboys? Would you care to partake? I will watch it with you. And then it's like, what's going on? Like, yes, I do want to watch it, but the way you delivered that made me feel uncomfortable as well. So it's just hard.
There's the, I can't remember the name of the Christmas movie, but the all black cast Christmas movie that came out, was it last year? Jingle, I don't remember. Anyways.
I missed it.
Oh, Jingle Jangle or something?
Something like that. Jingle Jangle.
No,
it's
it
like
really
that.
is. I'm not.
I believe you.
Something like that. It is something like that. And
they have
some beautiful costumery in the movie, and it's very. I mean, it was all about representation, right? But it's like, that Black Christmas movie, and I'm like, I hear what you're saying. And did you know that Black people celebrate Christmas too? Like, there's Christmas is for just white people. I don't know. I just get these visions sometimes. I'm like, what goes on in your head?
It just makes it more othering sometimes. Like
it does.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, I own a black Santa Claus statue because I grew up in white places, and so you just didn't have one of those. And as an adult, I found one. My partner saw one and was like, "Hey, we need to have this in our home." And I was like, God, I didn't realize how much of a difference that makes.
It's really interesting. And that's one where people's explicit biases can come out real quick when they're like, well, look at my Black Santa. They're like, that's not right. You're like, oh, that's me. Like, and some part I've been conditioned so much where I almost think that in my head.
Right.
We're like, but he's not white. And you're like, it's.
Nah, man.
That one's rough.
I immediately am like, oh, well, Santa's not black. Santa's not real, motherfucker. Like, we're not doing this.
Whoa, he's
I'm
not?
not having this conversation.
Like, you just ruined kids' Christmas.
People look at fantasy stuff and they're like, well, it would be weird to have black people there. I'm like, there's dragons. What do you mean?
That makes sense.
Have black people.
No, it's hard. It's going to come down to, once again, just more understanding, more allyship. And eventually, whenever it won't happen. Let's just be honest. Whenever it comes down to a point where it's not such a hard thing to be like, your skin is different than mine, I don't like that. Like, it's humans are weird, and people are like, this is different, I don't like it. And people need to get past that and be like, this is different, that's okay. You can exist in any space you would like to. Please do not steal my stuff or eat my food. And then, like, just basic things, and then we'll get better off. But that won't be until, like, year 50, 56, or I don't know.
Yeah. So to kind of sum this up, this is our last regular show. To sum this up for everybody who's been listening, don't take Seto's food. Don't ask me questions until after I've had a drink or two. And let's see, for Jessica, do not call her an Oreo by any stretch of the imagination, or even hint at an Oreo. So if you have takeaways from that, that's what this is. No, but thank you, Seto. I think it is important I'm glad you came on the show, one, because of your visibility. And it is important that people be able to see someone who looks like themselves. And then, really, you were talking about the story about being pulled over and handcuffed. Like, people need to know that these stories are here in the SCA. Like, the whole point of Voices of Color and Skating and Stories was to highlight that these stories happen. They happen to more than one person. We want to validate the people of color who are watching this, and we want to let our, white allies or people who are just interested in learning that, this shit happens. This shit happens on a daily to all of us. And
I know you're trying to be aware. I know you're trying to close up Derail on that last part. Yeah. If I'll leave you the last story with you. Please. Once again, this was through Steel. It was really cool. Sabah was not fighting. I was one of the only Black people in international tournament of the Shiv, where people came from Belarus, Ukraine, all this stuff. We're fighting people from all over the world here. And I'm tired from fighting this whole day doing this stuff. And Sabah says, my biggest Sabah is she's like, hey, come over here. Come over. Yeah, come over here. I'm like, Sabah, I'm tired. I don't want to. Come on, just 1 sec. All right. And I look over there, and he's like, I want you to see this. There were 3 Black kids, little kids, like a girl, 2 boys. They're like swinging swords. And they're looking at me, and I kid you not, they're like, can I be a knight too? Can I learn how to do this stuff? I'm just like, all of a sudden I'm tired. Like you bet you can. Whatever you want. You learn, and if anything comes from that, the representation and knowing that kids look at that, and that makes a big difference. And it really does help. So that was just like the last story I'll have to say, where it's really worth it.
No, I love that. I love that story. I love stories like that. It really, y'all are paving the way, and I appreciate all the work that you both are doing. That Gigi does. That all you other folks out there carrying the torch. I mean, please.
You too.
Yeah. You're carrying it for those future folks. Those little tykes who are coming up behind us. So there are people who are watching and learning.
Do it soon,
I don't
kids.
have any little tykes, but I know some people who do. So thank you for being on the show again. I really appreciate you coming out, and want to remind people that volunteer. Like, these are folks' lives. They're coming on being authentic selves, and it's really cool that we have this opportunity, and you all have this opportunity to be in this space with us. This is our last regular show for the 2021 season.
Was the last show?
You were the last regular show. We're gonna do one more show in December. No, it was I'm glad to end on a really good note. I think this episode was really easy and laid back, and it felt like a good ending note for us. So thank you. We're going to do one more show in December, where we're going to wrap it up, and the ladies are taking the couch back. So you will see Jessica, myself, and Gigi December 14th, I think it will be. We'll let you know. And we're going to wrap up 2021. This show has been wild. This has been such a journey for myself, getting to meet folks. I mean, I've only known maybe 1% of the people we've interviewed. So this has been huge for me. We have people who have watched from all over the world. I think the only from Australia, I think the only continent we haven't hit was I'm lied. I'm gonna have to look that up and let y'all know. But this has been viewed all over the world. So we've had a lot of cool things happen. And thank you, Seto, for coming on, sharing your stuff, closing out the regular show.
Thank you for having
Jessica,
me.
we will see you in December for the next show. And again, for our viewers, please take the time to watch, take the time to listen, and do the thing. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have
Thank
a good
you.
night.